Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Pastor Ernest. Yeah. Okay, so as I was saying, we are the NMBF Coffee Chats, and we would love to be in touch with you after this program also, and keep you posted about topics like these, which are very interesting, but sometimes we don't hear enough about it. That's what we try to do, and we are very open to your suggestions also. Okay, so now what we today will be discussing this very interesting topic on the dilemma between a joint or a nuclear family, and how do we, which one we choose, how do we go about balancing our relationships. And we have with us Dr. Jamila Koshy. Dr. Jamila Koshy needs no introduction for most of us, but for those of us who may be new, she's a psychiatrist by practice. She graduated from the Armed Forces Medical College, Pune, and completed her postgraduate studies in psychological medicine from the University of Bombay. She has served in the Indian Army. Dr. Jamila has contributed to many books and journals. The books Side by Side, Talking Families, Should I Care, and Public Theology, Exploring the Expressions of the Christian Faith are also part of the initiative in the group writing on issues of contemporary concern. Okay, so Dr. Jamila will be speaking at for a certain length of time, and after which we will have a time of interaction. So please save up your questions, and you could put it on the chat, or you could unmute and ask at that time. And so we'll give you enough time to ask your question and answer. So over to you, Dr. Jamila. Welcome once again. Thank you so much for joining with us.
Thank you so much, Pastor Abid, and I'm so happy to see so many people here. And thank you for the privilege of speaking and just bringing up this issue for discussion. It's actually a very relevant topic, as I said. Normally, if we say anything to do with families, people from all faiths, from all walks of life are interested, because ultimately, I think we are all, we are all interested in having very vibrant and helpful and cooperative and flourishing families. So yes, this is the topic which we all need to talk about. We need to discuss more and more. So let's get started. Okay, so I've been asked to take it this way, but as I was thinking about it, I realized that there is a lot of shall I say, there's a lot of discussion about what a family is and how we even define the word family. So for instance, in all these various serials that you see these days, all the sitcoms and things like that, there's often the impression given that a group of friends is like family. It's your new family. It's your family away from home. So these are people who are not related at all. They may just be friends living together, but they function as a family. So can we look at that as a family? Does that actually fit the picture? What are we talking about? In this 21st century, do we have to rework our whole idea of family? So there is obviously a lot of discussion going on about this, particularly in the context of all the various legal issues which come up, whether it's live-in relationships or gay relationships, or there's so many issues which come up. What exactly is a family? We sometimes are at a loss to explain or understand, isn't it? So, of course, the typical picture, as Abhijit said, was the joint family, right? We always thought of a joint family as the norm, right? A father, a mother, a sort of patriarch, and then the children. There'll be various a number of boys, a number of girls. The boys, when they get married, some of them will move out maybe to cities, but some of them continue to stay in the family. Some of them take over the family business or the family property, and they take care of the elderly as they age. And some of the maybe single people may continue to stay in the family. So particularly the single girls may continue to stay, but as the girls marry, they go out to other families. This is the picture that we have seen as a normative kind of thing. Though actually there are different versions of this, and there are different versions as we come to, of people who don't fit this exact pattern. There are different forms of it. But this has been the norm. So in fact, in India, the Hindu undivided family, the HUF, is seen as a unit and entity in itself. But then as time went by, now a lot of change has happened. And we can see, of course, the picture on the right, right? The nuclear family. So a husband, wife, and the 2 children or 3 children or whatever. This is another picture that we see now increasingly as the norm for a family. But then, of course, again, the same pattern follows. So there will, the idea is that there is one person and their spouse and their children, and there is a sort of hierarchical structure. So this is the way that the family is perceived even now in the nuclear family. But then, as you can see, even in these pictures which I have picked, the common picture of a joint family would be people who are dressed more conservatively. So you can see that they are wearing more Indian kind of clothes. The women have covered their heads, and they are looking a lot more traditional or conservative or old-time Christians. Whereas the nuclear family that you perceive is seen as a more global, cross-generational, cosmopolitan kind of picture that we see. So are these the only 2 patterns? Is this what we have to choose between one of these 2 patterns? Is this our only choice? This is something which we need to obviously think about. Well, let's look at a wider definition of a family, which sociologists have tried to give, all right? So they have defined a family as, earlier it was always said that it is a group of people who are bound together by kinship, okay, or by marriage, and they live in one space, they share a kitchen, and they share financial resources. So this was the earlier definition of a family. But then slowly, this definition has been sort of expanded. And sociologists are realizing that there is more to this than just kinship and marriage. There is, for instance, adoption, which is very much a part of many cultures. And increasingly, India is seeing also a lot of people who are adopted. It's always been there, but now it is legalized and there's a whole system of adoption. So adoption obviously is also another way of a person joining a family. What about consensual unions of people who are not married, right? Now, there have been different laws now which have offered protection to women in live-in relationships, giving it a validity of a union which is recognized as something which needs to be protected. As in, there is a validity to even a live-in relationship. There is a sort of family structure which is going on even there, because apart from the legal document of marriage, that they are sharing one geographical space, they are sharing a kitchen, they're sharing responsibilities for the house and financial resources. So legally and socially speaking, obviously, it is a kind of family unit. So as you can see, all these criteria, whether it is kinship, whether it is marriage, whether it is adoption, the consensual union, all these things can be stretched. Even this whole living in one geographical space. So for instance, would a person who has, say, migrated to the city, but he goes home every the sowing season, a lot of them go home to sow their fields, and they stay a few months in the village and then they go back to the city. We know any number of people who are doing this. Many migrants are living like this. Now, they're not sharing the geographical space with the wife and the children who are left behind in the villages, but they are still committed to the family. They go back regularly. They send money home. They are committed, and they're sort of doing what they're doing in the city, often to support the family back home. However, they're not sharing a kitchen. Now, similarly, a family unit which, there is a, say, father and mother living upstairs and the son and daughter living downstairs, but they have 2 separate kitchens, right? So sometimes the kitchen is shared. Sometimes you have people who might live in the house and don't take responsibility at all. So are they part of the family? Okay. They refuse to share their money. They may not take part in the chores. They may not, contribute anything. Are they part of the family? Yes, they also are part of the family. And similarly, you have people, of course, who might not share their financial resources. They may be very dominant about it. They may not share what they have. They may not tell what they have. They may use it for selfish purposes. Is this also... So this kind of thing, the stretching of these definitions and rules is seen all over in the whole issue of what is a family. All right. In any case, that is a definition that we have right at the moment. But we also need to understand that the whole idea of defining a family as joint or nuclear is only part of the picture. There are a whole lot of other things by which families are defined. For instance, patriarchy or matriarchy. Is the family authority structure the eldest male, or is it the eldest female? We know that largely in India and largely across the globe, patriarchal families are the norm, where the eldest male member tends to be the leader of the household. However, there are different other patterns as well. There are sometimes matriarchal families. If the father has passed away, or if the mother is a very, is the person in the family where there is a lot of wealth and there is a lot of property, that the woman may be the controlling factor in that particular family. Similarly, are the families matrilocal or avuncular local? Do they live in the father's side of the family? Do they live on the mother's side of the family, or do they live in a neutral space? Property descent. Does it happen via the male line? Does it happen via the female line? Or does it happen, as is increasingly happening in modern families, to both the girls and the sons and the daughters? So for instance, you see this first picture here is of a patriarchal family. You see the father is leading the family prayer, and the two wives, okay, or wife and daughter, whatever, we're not very sure, are obviously behind him and following his lead. So this is a patriarchal family. Here we have a matriarchal family, Tarwad in Kerala, okay, which are often Nair families where women-led matrilineal families where the property descends down the female line. And we know that among the Khasis and some other tribes in Meghalaya also, this pattern is prevalent. Even though they might be patriarchal, okay, the eldest male member might actually be the authority figure. Well, as we said, joint and nuclear is another way of defining it. And we also need to accept that in India, there are a lot of polygamous families. And surprisingly, or not so surprisingly, Hindu families are actually more in number when it comes to polygamy than Muslim families. We tend to think it's only Muslims, but it's equally Hindus as well as Muslims. And I know a Christian family which is polygamous, okay? And so we know different families which may be polygamous, where there are one husband, and three three wives who may share the same husband. So you can see that picture over there. So all that I'm trying to say is that we need to understand that there are a lot of family types, and to restrict ourselves and think that these are the only two patterns, well, there might be the only common two patterns are the ones that we need to think about, but we need to not exclude others who may be functioning in different other kinds of families. They are also valid and legitimate, and they need to be discussed and understood. Okay. So for instance, let's look at these different kinds of families. A father and his two young children and his widowed sister moves in to help. Okay. So what kind of a family is this? Is this a joint family? Is it a nuclear family? The widowed sister is there in, when the mother passed away, actually, these are all families that I know. All right. When the mother passed away, the father's sister moved in to help to look after the children. A single woman with an adopted child, is that a family? Yes, of course it is. But what kind of family is that? A couple who have just started a startup together, they share a flat, okay? So they are roommates, live-in partners, not married yet, but they share household responsibilities, they share a flat, they share the rent, they live together, they share finances to a certain extent. So is this a family? We have a quandary here. A mother and three siblings with families living in 4 floors and all of them with separate kitchens. How do we define this kind of family? A man dividing his time between 2 houses, 2 women and their children. This is a common pattern among many polygamous families. This is an interesting pattern. 2 or 3 cousins studying and living together in a city. We see this all the time, particularly in people from the Northeast or people from different villages who come to the city. The young people live together. They may not have a married couple, in the center of the family, but they share a flat, they live together, they support each other, and they form a sort of family. 2 sisters and their families sharing 1 flat. This is another pattern. Now, this is interesting. A remarried elderly man and his wife, okay? And because his children opposed the marriage, he has cut off from his estranged children. So you just have 1 remarried elderly man and his wife. That's a new kind of family. What about a widow and a widower who marry? Okay, so these are the blended families that we talk about these days. Their children may visit but never part. A son who lives abroad sends money but hasn't visited his parents for 15 years. Is he part of the family or has he left the family? These obviously are questions which we have to think about. All right. Now, sociologists have actually given names to a lot of these families. So a proton family, for instance, is a single individual, a person who's living alone. For instance, in this example, the fourth one, a mother and 3 siblings, okay, her 3 children who are living in 4 separate floors of one building. And the mother has a separate kitchen and she's actually living individually, but her children may be around, close by. But then she is a proton family, according to sociologists' proposed definitions. An electron family would be one, where the children, where the cousins are studying and living together in a city. There is no married couple there, but you have these different electrons without the nucleus in the middle, all right? A nuclear family, of course, is a single married couple with children. An atomic family is 2 married couples, okay? A married couple plus other single kin. So the first example that I gave, a father and his 2 children, okay, except that the mother was not, but the widowed sister has moved in to help. So this is a sort of adjusted nuclear family, an atomic family. A molecular family, where you have 2 married couples of different generations living together. So a father and mother and the son and his wife. That would be an example of a molecular family. A joint family is when you have 2 couples of the same generation or 3 couples of different generations living together. So for instance, that first picture that we saw, right? So you have here 3 couples, at 4 couples, a father and mother and these 3 younger couples. That would be a picture of a joint family, all right? Then you have what are called quasi-families, where there is no legal marriage, but any of these structures can be there. And it's important for us to realize that there are different kinds of families. We should not feel that there is only one pattern of the sociological family which is acceptable. And of course, the question to us would be, what is best? Which is the best way to do it? Is there a best at all? Right. Now, in order to do that, and the next question, which Christians, of course, will always ask is, which is biblical? What is biblical? Is a joint family biblical? Is a nuclear family biblical? Okay, so I'm going to give you a sort of, an interactive time where you're going to tell me if you can identify these particular people. Tell me if this is a biblical example. And if it is, tell me who these people are. So tell me the first one. You can put it in the chat or you can raise your hands and just talk and tell me, all right, who it is. A woman, her daughter-in-law, the daughter-in-law's new husband and son. Is this a biblical pattern of a family? If so, who is it? Anyone is welcome to give me the answer.
Ruth.
Any
Yes.
guesses?
Thank you, Mrs. Jacob. That is Ruth, Naomi, Boaz, and Ruth's son.
Yes.
Okay, a single woman staying with her brother in his house. Is this a biblical pattern? Is this a biblical family?
Anyone? Come on.
Anyone? Give it a shot.
Single woman.
Absalom and Tamar.
Yes, Absalom and Tamar. That's right. Absalom and Tamar. Tamar lived a desolate woman. She was single and she stayed in Absalom's house. And Absalom actually names his daughter after her. Right. Okay, who's this? A young man who takes his friend's mother into his house after the friend dies. Is this a family? Is this a biblical family? And who is this? Yes.
John and Jesus' mother Mary.
Yes, thank you, Kasturi. That is John and Jesus' mother Mary. So John takes Mary into his house, right? And we know that Jesus had brothers and sisters, but for whatever reason, Jesus entrusts Mary to John, and John takes Mary into his house. And well, is that a family? That's the question that we have to ask, right? It's a different kind of family. All right. A man, his wife, and her mother. Biblical family? Who is this? Yes?
Yes. It's on the chat. By
Peter,
Amy.
from the chat.
Peter.
Okay, right. Let me just have a look.
Amy saying.
Yes,
Peter.
Amy, thank you. That was Peter and his wife and her mother. Okay, so who's this? A couple and their friend, all in the same trade. They live together.
Priscilla.
Are they a family?
Priscilla.
Yes, Priscilla, Aquila, and Paul. They all lived together, all right? Paul was, well, their house guest, but he was so close to them that, they are that a family. That's something we need to think about, right? There are these pictures of people living together. And I'm bringing these out because I want you to understand that the Bible doesn't actually say that this is right or this is wrong. It doesn't actually lay down any picture that this is how a family is. It shows us different pictures of different kinds of people living together in different times and ways. Okay, a man bringing up his orphaned younger cousin.
Esther.
Yes, that
Mordecai.
is Mordecai and his cousin Esther.
Esther.
So Esther loses her father and mother, and Mordecai brings her up. All right, is that a family? Yes, of course it's a family. All right, so you have an older cousin bringing up a younger cousin as a different biblical picture of family. Okay, a man, his son, his daughter-in-law, and his grandson all traveling together. Yeah, anyone? It's a biblical picture. It's one of our stalwarts of faith. Abraham. Abraham, his father, okay, and his wife Sarai and his nephew, obviously the father's grandson, Lot. They lived together. They were, this kind of family. So a man, 4 wives, and his children from the 4 wives. That's easy and very common. Jacob and his 4 wives, right? What about this one? A woman, her daughter, and her grandson.
Anyone? Come on quickly.
It's
from the new. Yeah, Emmy has answered.
Timothy.
A woman, her daughter, and her grandson.
Emmy has answered in the chat.
Yes, someone's in the chat. Let me just have a look. Yes, thank you. It was Timothy and his mother and his grandmother. So these are different kinds of families, and you can see the range of families that there are, right? There are mixed families, there are monogamous families, there are families which are women-led, there are families which are not really, for instance, Naomi and Ruth, they didn't have any blood relationship. No, of course, they were related by marriage, but even after Ruth marries, Naomi is still living with her, right? And then Tamar Tamar didn't live in David's house. She was living in Absalom's house, right? John taking Mary into his household, and Mordecai bringing up his cousin, and Peter's mother-in-law staying with them, being part of the family. So you see these different patterns of family in the Bible, and I wanted to bring this out because I want to emphasize that there is no one picture which is the picture. All right. I know that nowadays we have kind of stressed the nuclear family so much. All right. We say that the nuclear family is God's pattern for family. And to an extent, of course, there is some point in that, but we need to understand that many versions of the family do exist on the ground. And we don't need to immediately sort of cast them all aside. Some have obvious problems. For instance, polygamy is a big problem. Polygamy can cause, a lot of strain on the family. It breaks that one flesh unity between husband and wife. It causes, also the stress and problems within the family. Of course, polygamy is not God's picture at all. Sexism, the whole pattern that the male dominates the female, whether you have patriarchal household, that's not God's ideal picture either. So many of these pictures of family do have problems, but we need to understand that in any pattern, we need to find the ideal principles of family life and try to fit them into whatever our cultural pattern is, and try and figure out what is the best way to deal with it. For instance, if your family is living in a say, polygamous family, or if you are in a matrilineal family, or if you're in a, what should I say, suppose you're in a woman-led single parent family, does that mean that you're not a family? Does that mean that if you don't have that nuclear family picture, that you have no right to exist, that you have no rights to be there, or your pattern is wrong or whatever? No, I don't think so. Let's look at the principles for family life, which God brings out in the Bible. And I've got these various principles put down. I think the first thing to remember is Genesis 1:27. Abhijit, can I ask you to read out those verses one by one?
Yeah, sure.
Genesis 1:27 to 28.
Genesis 1:7 to
27 and 28.
okay, 27 and 28. Okay, here close. Okay, I'll just okay, since your screen share is already okay, I'll read it quickly. Genesis 1:27 to 28. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground.
All right, thank you. So that is the first principle of family life, to recognize all members of the family, whatever the family pattern, as equally responsible image bearers of God. Okay, God has created them in his own image. Every single person, man, woman, and potentially children as well, will be responsible image bearers of God. So we need to recognize this in each other, so that is our pattern for family, that we are all image bearers of God. And therefore, I'll come to that. Many things will follow from that. Because we are image bearers of God, because we are created by God to follow in his footsteps, okay? Therefore, all have to live to honor God in the family. We have to do what is right. We have to do what is good. We have to try to contribute to a better world. We have to, live lives which are pleasing to God. Proverbs 31, verse 25, 26, and 29 is one example. Abhijit?
Which reference again?
Proverbs 31, 25, 26, and 29.
31, 25, 26. Okay. Just a second.
Pastor, can I?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yes. Proverbs 31, 25 verse 10. Strength
25.
and 25.
25, 26, and 29.
25. Strength and honor are her clothing, and thou shall rejoice in the very small.
Okay.
Anyone is ready? She
Yeah.
repeat. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her saying, in the law of
Okay.
kindness, she kicketh will two ways of her husband household, and emptieth her the
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mrs. Jacob. No problem.
So sorry.
No problem. She's clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. And what is it? Many women, her children rise and call her blessed. And they say, many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. So this is the picture of a woman who's, who's speaking with wisdom, giving faithful instruction, doing noble things, living to honor God. Okay, so living a life which is good and right. And this is what everybody in the family is supposed to be doing this. Now, in the context of the marital relationship, obviously, Genesis 2:24, this is the principle that God has laid down.
That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh.
So faithfulness to each other, okay, exclusivity in the intimate relationship, and complete unity, becoming one flesh. So they're completely united in everything that they do. They're united in taking care of their children. They're united in the way they relate to other people, including their parents. They're united in the way they handle their finances. They're united in the way they make decisions. Okay, they're united in work, in everything is done together. They're united in one, a complete unity, a very close and intimate relationship which they share. This is the picture of the ideal relationship in the family, in the intimate relationship, in the couples or married relationship which might be there in the family. Okay, now because we recognize the first point I said, because we recognize that all members of the family are equally responsible image bearers of God, therefore, the fourth point, you show respect to all one to another, you show respect to each other, because you recognize that all of us are made in the image of God, all right? And especially Exodus 20:12 is honor your father and mother. Okay, that is what God tells us. Ephesians 5:33, that is where it says that, I'll just read that out for you. Ephesians 5:33. However, each of you must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. And similarly, 1 Peter 3:7, 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 7, where it says, husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives and treat them with respect, okay, as a weaker partner and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life. So honor your father and mother, respect your husband, respect your wife, okay? So all the adults in the family are specifically told that we need to respect each other, show that honor and respect to each other. And this is an essential for living in the family life. Taking decisions together. Genesis 2:24 talked about that unity, that the man and his wife, therefore a man will leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they will become one flesh. And that whole point of becoming one flesh is being united. And what is being united? It's the whole thing of doing things together, right? And I remember that when my husband and I got married, we went for a family conference, and the speaker there itself, Bishop C.V. Matthew, he told us, take this one thing away, that marriage is about doing things together. So take your decisions together. That's a great principle for family life. One person does not need to dominate. One person does not need to boss. One person does not need to, be the decision maker and everything. Take your decisions together. Consult each other. The person who's more trained or skilled in a particular area can give the lead, but both share in the decisions together. Now, apart from that, as you see in this cloud, this family cloud here on the side, love and concern and service is very much part of the family thing. That is how things work in the family. Okay, we share everything. We share our possessions. We show love. We show our concern, love for each other by sharing our money, sharing our time, giving time to each other, serving each other. This is God's principle for family life. Mark 10:43-45, and somebody else read 1 Timothy 5:4 and 8.
Yeah, anyone can quickly read 1 Timothy 5 verse 4 and 8.
1 Timothy 5 verse 4. But if a widow has children or grandchildren, let them first learn to show godliness to their own household and to make some return to their parents, for this is pleasing in the sight of God. And verse 8, but if anyone does not provide for his relatives, especially for the members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever.
All right. Thank you, Amy. So this is very much about how we take care of people in our household. Okay, we very generously give up our time, our money, our everything in order to serve the grandparents, parents, and anybody in the household. Mark 10:43-45, it tells us why.
It's on the chat. Anyone can read it.
Yeah. But so shall it not be among you, but whosoever shall be great among you shall be your minister, and whoever of you will be the chiefest shall be servant of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to be ministered and to give his life a ransom for many.
This is the principle in the family. We are to serve each other. You have to serve everybody all the time. That is to be our attitude of every human being, but particularly in the family. We saw how in First Timothy it says we should care for the members of our household, particularly the older people, the vulnerable people, the sick people, the elderly people, the children, those who are in some way incapacitated, not able to work, whatever it is. The special care for the vulnerable in the family is something which is a duty for all people. These are the ideal principles for our family life. This is what we need to bring into whatever family pattern we are particularly part of. But then let's look at the whole thing about joint families and nuclear families. Is there something that we need to learn and understand about them? Now, joint families are often in, particularly in our context, they're often, I put the positive things below and the negative things on top in both cases, okay? So some of the negative things they can be patriarchal and hierarchical, all right? So, the eldest male tends to make the decisions. The men tend to have a lot more power. The property goes down in the male line. The name goes down in the male line. The women move from one patriarchal family to the other. Okay, so from one family they go to the other. The descent is not downwards. It is more or less the women move sidewards. Okay, but and it's hierarchical. The eldest person tends to take the decisions, and the elder generation can often interfere in the affairs of the younger people, whether it is work, whether it is how they spend their time, how they spend their money, how they bring up their children. So the elder generation can interfere. And because of this, the husband-wife unity in the younger generation may not crystallize. And we often see this problem that the husband or the wife will be more attached to their family. They may be more attached to their parents. They're not able to form the kind of unity that priority giving to the spouse doesn't often happen in joint families. Another thing is that because of all this, the younger generation and women cannot do their thing, They don't have the freedom to take their own decisions, to spend the time as they like, to choose how to dress or to do work or whatever it is. This can cause a lot of stress. The advantages of living in a joint family are support for the vulnerable is much easier, right? So the elderly, the sick, those who are not able to work, those who might be widowed or whatever it is, the vulnerable can find a place to sort of cushion them in times of difficulty in joint families. Children can benefit a lot from joint families because they have a lot of people around. They learn to adjust, they learn to cooperate, they learn to care for grandparents, they learn to adjust with cousins. So children can have the benefit of many things in a joint family. Financially, of course, it is often an easier option for many. They don't have to pay rent on their own, they don't have to buy a vehicle, So there's a lot of shared stuff which happens. So financially, it could be an easier option for many people. Nuclear families. Now, the negative things about nuclear families are some of the positives of the joint family. It can be lonelier in a nuclear family. The husband goes off to work or the wife goes off to work and the other is left alone, right? They don't have the other cushioning of the other members of the family to talk, share, all that. It can be costlier because you have to pay rent, you have to shop, you have to, have a vehicle, you have to do a lot of things which otherwise would be provided by the joint family. And therefore, all this can lead to a lot of stress. Suppose a person is sick, suppose a child falls sick, the cushioning of the elder members of the family to take care of the other logistics is not there. So nuclear families can be stressful, at particularly times of crisis. There is less support for the vulnerable. You're not able to care for other members of the family because there are only two. There's only the father and the mother there to provide the support. So taking care of the less fortunate, the vulnerable members of your family is more difficult in a nuclear family. Childcare can be difficult, again, because of time, because of work, and it ends up with the nuclear family being very child-focused. Whereas joint families can have a focus on larger things. It can focus on more things. So children may grow up in nuclear families to be a little self-absorbed. That can be one problem. They may not learn to look at other people's needs. They may not learn to adapt and be cooperative. However, the positive things are that each generation has independence. And that is valued sometimes by both the older generation as well as the younger generation. They can do, the grandparents are free to travel. They're free to do something else if they want. So they have the independence, and the younger people also have the independence to work as they like, dress as they like, have call the guests as they like, call the girl's family if they want to, if it's a patriarchal family, that sort of thing. So independence is more. Individuals can therefore flourish. They can do what they have in their mind to do a lot easier. And of course, women have more independence in nuclear families. That is also an advantage which is seen. However, I'm saying again that it's not that joint family versus nuclear family. That's not really the way to look at it. We have to understand how families function. We have to understand that these are the positive and negative things of both, and then come to a decision as to how we are going to live our family. Okay. Of course, we know the Christian pattern, which is that husband and wife should form that exclusive, this third thing, this faithfulness, complete unity, exclusivity, and that closeness between the husband and wife. Sometimes that doesn't form in the joint family. Therefore, if you feel that it is a dominating kind of pattern in your particular family, it may make sense to move out, particularly in the early years of marriage, and form that unity, learn to be independent, learn to handle things for yourself before, if you need to, moving back to care for your elderly parents or whatever it is. All right. We also know at the same time that if there is illness or if there's a financial need or something like that, which makes it difficult for you to be an independent nuclear family, you may choose to stay in the joint family. But if you stay in the joint family also, you must still develop these principles. Okay, recognize that every person is a responsible image bearer. And we all have to do what pleases God. We all have to use our gifts for God. All right. And we have to form that husband-wife unity and not let the elders, interfere in that. We should be able to bring up the children in the way that each husband and wife feels is the best. While they can take advice from the older people, but the older people should not be dominating in this. At the same time, showing respect to the older generation is very important. And showing respect each to one another. The elders should respect the youngers should respect the elders. This includes the children. We should not treat children as if they are our slaves or toys or something like that. They're not. They are also individuals made in the image of God. We need to be respectful of them. We need to give them their choices. Okay. And increasingly, as they grow up, we need to allow them to make their own choices, whether it comes to studies, whether it's the college course they choose, whether it's the marriage that they choose. They need to be allowed to participate in their own decision making and slowly take over their own decision making, because it is their decision to make. We need to respect each other. All right. Particularly in joint families where hierarchy is strong, the elders need to learn to respect the youngers and give them their space. We need to learn to take decisions together, and most of all, to show the love and concern to each other. An attitude of service, taking care of the vulnerable, the sick, the elderly. If they are sick, if our parents are sick, there's no way, we cannot leave them in the lurch. We have to make every effort, whether we're living in a joint family or a nuclear family. We have to take every effort to reach out and find ways to, to care for the vulnerable in our families, to have that attitude of service, no matter what kind of pattern of family we have, chosen, or sometimes circumstances have forced us to choose. All right. So this is what I wanted to share. All right. And I don't know if my thoughts have been as clear as I hope I've expressed it clearly. In any case, I'll stop here. Thank you very much. And my wish is that all of us will have families which will flourish and be places where God's shalom is brought to the family also and to others around us also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jamila, for this wonderful session. And now we will enter into a time of Q&A. I'm going to stop this live stream.